UIC. Freedom the people of hell yeah. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road. Ready for broke every chain. That when you free up the people, levitate. Jamaica member, you ever great. I feel burn up the fire upon every snake. Me give thanks in every way. God still a look down once see we safe. Are you I see run the road long time. GLP and PMP I sell we out till.
Hi and good evening. Welcome to another edition of UIC Jamaica Live. This is Joseph Patterson tuning in. Very impromptu. Didn't plan to have this at all. But earlier today, I was on a talk on a Silburn's show. And so we're talking about Jamaica's readiness for war and the impact that might have on Jamaica and how we deal with it. And I've also seen a couple of you writing on Facebook. You're asking what is the UIC's position on this conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So I figure I should say something on it. I don't like to just comment quickly on these matters because it's a good idea to allow the government to comment first and say what they need to say and so on. But good evening, everyone. Good evening, Carol Young, or good night. And good night to you as well, Osborne, Lamar. Good night to you. I think it's Joanne, Carlene Jones. Welcome, welcome everyone. So tonight I want to just quickly talk about the situation in Russia and the Ukraine and the impact of that on Jamaica. And you'd have also seen where we have the problem with our students that were stranded in the war zone in Ukraine. I see Ernell saying it's the end of time. Greetings, Annalisa. Good to see you. Good night, and more. Good to see you on as well. So I'll take your questions on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. But suffice it to say, the UIC is watching the situation closely, looking at developments in the country, and making sure that we understand what the ramifications are for Jamaica. There are some obvious issues, the first of which is our students that are there. We did not get into the fray of, the fiasco of, who is putting up how much money to bring our students home because we thought that was really very inappropriate. What we wanted to see was the government taking strong diplomatic actions privately, not making a public spectacle of the matter, but going in and rescuing our students through the diplomatic channels and allies that we have, connected to the region. I was very surprised when I saw the Prime Minister suggesting a loan to the students to come out, and the opposition leader raising $10,000 for it. I thought that was just so inappropriate. But you may not agree with me. Some have a different view. I thought it would have been more appropriate for the government to simply ascertain how many students we have on the ground, not make any public announcements about it, and go in and rescue those students quietly and as efficiently as possible and have them back in Jamaica. And of course, that's for those who want to come to Jamaica, right? A question here from Adrian saying, if I was Prime Minister, could have tried to work with the Ukrainian government to get all our people home. Absolutely. The thought of a loan would even Yeah, it would not know. We would not do that. I mean, I found it really inappropriate for the government to be talking about a loan. I mean, when a person is in a crisis, where their lives are being threatened, that's not the time to be talking about a loan. Good evening, Latoya. Good to see you on. So I was very disappointed, very disheartened about it. And I was then shocked when I saw the fiasco developing with the opposition leader saying that they're raising 10,000. My response was simple. Prime Minister, get there through the diplomatic channels, get her people out, and then we can talk about it afterwards, right? Not make it a public spectacle. So that being said, there are some serious ramifications coming down the road, depending on how this war develops and how it escalates, if it escalates. Right now, our hearts and minds are with the people of Ukraine, those who are innocent bystanders. Sometimes government get into all of these conflicts, but it's the people, the ordinary people on the ground who suffer. Those who find their lives upended, have to be dodging bombs and trying to escape the war zone. I can just imagine how difficult and terrible it must be for those persons who are trapped or who have to be trying to escape the areas. And so our hearts and minds are with them. We pray that everything will go as best as possible, especially for those who are young children, pregnant mothers. We are thankful that those who are trying to escape the region seem to be welcomed by their neighboring countries. So that's a very good sign. And I know that the powers that be are working behind the scenes to de escalate the situation and hopefully prevent further destruction and deaths from occurring. In the meantime, Jamaica looks at the situation seriously, knowing that any disruption, any further disruption to the global economy will have severe impact on Jamaica. We know that Jamaica, unfortunately, is not food secure because we have squandered the last 78 years in failing to make our country a strong country that can feed itself. And so any impact to supply chain and to global oil prices will have major shock impacts on our country here. We expect to see further increases in the price of oil, and unfortunately, we have not diversified our energy sector. We've remained very dependent on foreign oil, very dependent on one major monopolistic supplier of energy, and our government has failed to diversify the energy sector so that we would have a mix of solar, biogas, wind, hydro, geothermal energy. These are all things that the UIC plans to address, but of course, we're not the government today, and we're talking about where we are today in our history, thanks to bad governance over the last 78 years. So we know that Jamaicans can brace for higher oil prices. Oil affects everything, transportation of food into and around the country. So that's going to push up food prices further, which is already high because of the mass inflation that's going on. Again, if our country had become food secure, we would not have been impacted so severely by food prices because we'd have been able to feed ourselves. Our farmers would have been able to produce adequate quantities, and the quality would be such that Jamaicans would be happy to purchase them, and we wouldn't have a problem. But unfortunately, that's where we are. We concerning the issue of other impacts on the economy. So we have the inflation to worry about. There's also going to be a general international food shortage. That, of course, started long before now because of the poor handling um, of the so-called pandemic, which has ravished us. And what concerns me now is that a lot seems to be going on to distract us from what was done to us. 2 years, for 2 years we have been placed under all kind of tyrannical activities, draconian measures. lockdowns, mask, um, uh, force and fraud in trying to push us to take a particular substance into our bodies. And people were even denied their right to free speech, their right to freedom of protest. We were denied our ability to express ourselves fully, with all kind of censorship being done across various platforms. And there needs to be accountability. We need to have a special inquiry into these things. How did our governments make decisions? What information did they have? Did they verify things before they pushed our country into one direction or another? So we should not forget these things, and we're going to have to circle back and come to them and keep them fresh in our minds and not allow these things to be swept on the carpet. Some of us were fined heavy fines, and some of us were locked up, in jail for, going against the government heavy-handed tactics. So I'm a little surprised when I see the Prime Minister now talking about protecting the sovereignty of another country when he failed to protect the sovereignty of the Jamaican people. And this is the problem we have. If we don't respect individual sovereignty, if governments around the world do not respect the sovereignty of their citizens, then you have a degradation in the moral standing that we need to have to defend the sovereignty of a collective state. And so, what we see in the world today is now a diminished leadership, where the global leadership of the so called free world has been severely compromised because of the things that they have done to their own citizens. We have just gone through a period of war where the government was at war with the people in most of their countries. We just saw what happened in Canada with the the truckers, the Freedom Convoy. We see the same thing happening in the U.S. right now. Of course, we also see a war against us on the media, where the media was turned against us. So now we don't even know what we can trust. We don't even know if we can trust the information we see coming out of Ukraine on our regular mainstream media, because the truth is, for 2 years, we've been bombarded with fake news where, mainstream media could not be trusted to tell us exactly what's going on. The information was being skewed. You have collusion between government, big data, big pharma, and big media controlling the narrative and not allowing us to freely hear from each other and hear from scientists and other experts who might have a different opinion or different view or a different set of facts that they need to share with us. So we're in a very delicate place in human history where we're slipping backwards. We should have been advancing to protect liberty, to protect free speech. We should be advancing in respecting the sovereignty of individuals, but instead we have slipped backwards into a dark period where government has become the enemy of the people. And here we are now, where one state is violating the rights of another state, apparently. There's a lot to it, a lot to be unpacked here. We can't take anything at face value. There are lots of relationship issues, lots of historical issues, lots of historical connections and global, what you call it now, geopolitical moves and counter moves. So we can't just take any side in the story. We have to look at everything and take things with a grain of salt and try to understand what is happening and see how best we can position ourselves. Now, our country, Jamaica, is not well positioned right now. We've lost our independence, the fake independence that we got. We've lost a lot of that, what we should have by now, independence. So the vast majority of our decision making is being controlled by forces outside of Jamaica, dictating to those who act as the puppets for the puppet masters here. And I hate to say that tonight. It's not something I want to say. It really touches me in a special way when I have to make comments like that, because it's not nice, but it's true. Jamaica is very not independent. We're very dependent. We're very subservient to others. So When our neighbors ask us to jump, we don't ask why. The question is how high. And so you see, over the last 2 years, where our prime minister, um, you know, in all of this, our prime minister pretty much was just following a script that was given to him. And here we are again. We've spent, you know, billions of dollars on things concerning a particular um, you know what do I call it? I'm afraid to choose my word. We're in a world now where you have to choose your words carefully, right? If you say the wrong word, then you're going to be blocked. Like we have been blocked recently by YouTube. So you have to be careful what words you use. But recently, for 2 years, we had a government that spent a ton load of money on advertisement and stuff, trying to force people to do something they don't want to do. And when it came time to rescue our students, we had hesitation in spending, and we have to talk about giving them a loan. So I don't understand that. Then we have the government talking about protecting sovereignty when we don't protect the sovereignty of our own people. So this is serious. Yeah, this is very serious. So what the UIC want to say to all Jamaicans here at home and abroad is that it's very important that we encourage respect for both individual and collective sovereignty. I see a question here or a reply. There's one thing that I've learned in leadership is that as leaders, we must not become insular with how we lead. In spite of the strategies, policies, economics, and politics, at the end of the day, we must never lose sight of whom really elected us, the people, and we must constantly remind ourselves of why we're really in high office. Very nicely said. But to be clear, the Jamaican people do not elect the government of Jamaica. The private sector organization of Jamaica, the elites there, they're the ones that elect the government. Yes, they invite us and cajole us and influence a minority of us to go to the polls and cast our votes for one of the two parties that they control. And we must never forget this. Yeah, we must never forget that when most people are going to the polls, they're going there because they have been herded and led there by a narrative created by two parties that are fully controlled by the private sector organization of Jamaica, the elites in that group. So if if we're going to get anywhere, we're going to have to overcome that hurdle and actually vote for something for a change. Where we are voting for something meaningful, right? So, as I said before, our government violated our rights. So they no longer have the moral authority to talk about protecting the rights of others, protecting the sovereignty of the people of Ukraine, for example. Yeah. The opposition also supported the government in violating our rights. You might recall the opposition stood up in parliament and supported, in fact, even encouraged and pushed the government to take stricter actions against those of us who did not wish to take the medication that they said we should take. I recall clearly, and it's on video, the opposition standing in parliament pushing to violate or to punish or to victimize Jamaicans who did not wish to take the kind of medication that he and his party, together with the government, thought we should mandatorily take. Let's not forget this, and this is very important. We have to keep these things in our minds because they want us to forget it. Right now, they're doing all kind of little projects to nice us up, to sweet us up, so that when they finally call the overdue local government election, you would have forgotten everything. Yeah, you would have forgotten all that was done and why you hated them so much a few months ago. And you can then again put your X beside the head or the bell, as you have done for the last 77 years, you, your mother, your grandparents, and so on. Yeah? So this is very important. So in the middle of all of this that we're seeing now in the Ukraine, we have to kind of step back and ask ourselves the question: what is really at play here? What is going on? We just came out of a massive, um, uh, what do you call it now, healthcare or health crisis, and we jump out of one crisis barely. We still even have some of the remnants going on in Jamaica right now. People are still wearing masks, and there's still curfew measures in place at the moment, and the people are suffering excruciatingly from high prices. And they just got a so-called raise in the minimum wage, which is not paid by the government. Remember, the minimum wage is not paid by the government; it's paid by businesses. Now, all of the big businesses, they're seeing a jump in, they get to pass on all the costs to you, the citizens, big businesses. So when Grace Kennedy imports a bunch of stuff into Jamaica and sell that to wholesalers and retailers to sell back to you, they recoup all of that cost. Yeah, everything. So whatever the inflated price is, they're getting all of that back. So they have no problem paying an inflated salary commensurate with a 28.5% increase in the minimum wage. So for them, that's nothing. But for the small man who cannot pass on that cost easily to his customers, he's now looking at a 28.5% increase in his labor costs, plus the additional taxes on top of that. So in this environment, the government loses nothing. The government is going to get a higher tax revenue from the increase in cost. So the increase in cost of goods and services means an increased amount of dollars coming in for the 15% GCT. Yeah, so no change to the government. Increasing the minimum wage does not cost the government anything because they're not the one paying that increase in minimum wage. But the government will get the additional tax revenue at that higher rate, right? So 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 you the employee will be paying more in taxes, and the small business employer will be paying more in taxes on those labor costs and a higher labor cost, as well as paying higher for the products that it's buying and paying more in GCT revenues to the government. So, in case you didn't realize it, the government is perfectly okay. The only person which is not okay is you and me. Anybody that is not at the top, you're having a problem. So if you're in the middle class, you're being squeezed further. If you're in the poorer class, then you're just poorer, right? And it's going on like that. So in all of this, let us not forget the human element. What's going on here? Yeah, this is we're talking now about the parent who is trying to find money to send their kids to school. We're talking about the higher cost of electricity, which is eating into your food budget. Because as oil prices go up and as the exchange rate go up, you're paying more for electricity, you're paying more for water. Because if you're renting, your landlord is going to increase your rent because his cost has also gone up, so your rent is going up. You're taking the taxi or the bus, your cost is going up there as well. If you're driving, your gasoline cost is going up, your insurance rate is also going up. So it's really getting very, very painful for the vast majority of us. And as the parents struggle, this struggle is felt by the children as well. The tension in the home goes up. The cut in their lunch money or bus fare goes up. The inability to buy the school book goes up. The teacher who is struggling comes to school more distraught and is therefore not in a position to effectively teach properly in the classroom because his or her mind is elsewhere trying to figure out how they're going to survive. So we have a lot of moving parts here, which is affecting the ordinary citizen on a day-to-day basis. So Adrian says the pandemic is not quite over, absolutely, but here's how you had the last laugh. You have been preaching for much of the last year that the government cannot keep the country indefinitely in lockdown, and that doing this would have detrimental consequences. And to add to that, people have been forced to take the injection, yet they're encouraging companies to mandate the injection still. Absolutely. Everything that I said at the start of this pandemic, everything that I predicted, the inflation that I predicted, the social consequences, the impact on our children, all of it, which the government ignored, have now come to pass in exactly the way I said it back in early 2020 when I outlined how this is going to go if the government took the direction that it did. Now, if you look at it, in some African countries, they have not done what many other countries have done. So they have much less, injection rates. Jamaica, still has, just around 20, 21% injected. And look at us, look at many of those countries. So as I said before, we never had to do this. We never had to shut down our production facilities. We never had to shut down our people in their homes. We could have continued to operate our economy within certain constraints, of course, and by focusing on education and public support. Yeah, but they didn't. Brent Gordon says opinion posters aren't interested in the strength in strengthening our democracy, nor would just let people know about the UIC. Did that, not to mention they're aligned with the two major parties. Yeah, man, Jamaica is a very, very sad country. Eh? So you have the media, the pollsters, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, of course, the two political parties, the banks, all of them are arrayed against you. The banks don't want to give us a bank account. The Electoral Commission of Jamaica is not independent. Um, the media is not objective, and and the private sector organization is committed to maintaining the status quo by pumping money into the two major parties. So the deck is stocked against you, Jamaica. It's stocked against us as a people. They're hell bent on making sure that you have no recourse whatsoever. Yeah. So they want to make sure that Jamaica is locked in the jaws of the private sector organization of Jamaica and the colonial masters. And the only way we're going to escape this is if we, the people, decide to get up and stand up and fight for our rights. We in Jamaica are going through our own war. It's been a war, a long war. There have been many casualties along the way. The high crime rate is a direct result of bad governance. The high failure rate in our schools is a direct result of bad governance. The bad economy is a direct result of bad governance. Your inability to buy a house or to pay it off in a reasonable time, your inability to buy a decent car and not have it mortgage your entire life is a result of bad governance. You're leaving university and not being able to find a job is a result of bad governance. So for 78 years, you have gone through this at different levels, and it's a severe problem. Greetings, Malcolm X. Good to see you on. Gavin Forrest is asking, what is my take on the digital currency? Well, the digital currency is nothing more than digitizing a fraud. Yeah. So the monetary system we have right now in Jamaica, because Jamaica doesn't have its own monetary system. Jamaica is an extension of the global monetary system. And the global monetary system is fraudulent. It is designed to systematically steal your wealth, right? By using all kinds of, well, it's very basic. They simply dilute the value of your money by introducing new fake monies into the economy, which is not tied to any real productivity. That's the bottom line. I mean, a simple way. Yeah. One second. So that system is now failing. That monetary system that was put in place, the Bretton Woods system, is has been failing and would have crashed by itself normally sometime around when this issue, you know, was brought in, this pandemic thing. So it would have failed normally on its own. But this pandemic and the massive liquidity that was pushed into the market was used to mask the failure of the monetary system, and then to say that it's, the devaluation of your money, the high inflation you're seeing now is simply caused by um, this pandemic. But if you think about it, if you understand how economics work, all of the stimulus spending that you've seen over the years, all of the remember in the 2008 when they had the so-called financial crisis, and then they had to do QE1 and QE2 and so on. All of that builds up into the demise of your money. Yeah, and so the in 2020, thereabouts, we would have seen massive hyperinflation anyway. So what they did was to use this crisis to mask that reality, that they've been lying to you all this time, that everything they told you about the banking system, all it's all a lie, and it was a facade. The so-called fiat currency, you can replace the word fiat with fake. It was fake money. It wasn't real. It wasn't tied to production. It was just at the whim of government, but not just government. It is actually managed by the banking cartels behind the scene, because your government, you know, has consistently given away its right or its role in managing money supply. It gave that away to the private banking cartels so they get to manage money supply. And when they managed this money supply, what they did was to lend artificially created money, money that's created without production, lend that to your government and charge the government interest on it, so that basically they get to make interest on money that they never earned, and the government has to pay back that money with interest, which they have to take from you in the form of taxation. So it's one big fraudulent system which has worked now for 50, over just over 50 years now. It has worked, and it has worked very, very well, because the vast majority of us have no idea. Yeah. No idea at all. The vast majority of us have no idea what's happening, how it works, and so they get to just do this. And what you feel in your daily lives is the cost of living keeps going up, and you can't understand, how do I keep up with this? So every year your cost of living is getting higher. Yeah, and you're working harder, but you can't keep up because they keep pulling the rug from under your foot. And how they pull it is by stealing your wealth through this system. Now, here's basically what's happening, right? Every time they print new money, which was not worked for, which is not tied to production, and which will not be tied to any production, they take away a piece of the value of your existing money. So if you're saving, so if you put, let's say, put $1,000 in the bank today, if they weren't stealing your wealth, what would happen is the $1,000 would sit in the bank. Let's say the bank was paying you no interest. It would sit in the bank. What would happen is the value of goods and services would not be going up. So that 1,000 that you put in the bank would still be worth $1,000 1 year from now or 20 years from now, give or take any natural inflation caused by, let's say, drought or famine or whatever, right? That can cause inflation, but that's natural. No human being has control over those, at least we hope. But when the government now working in a fraudulent system, yeah, engage in practices that dilutes your savings. So they actually have a plan. They call it targeted inflation. So they are saying in Jamaica they have targeted inflation to be between 4 and 6%. So what that means is every single year, on average, they're going to steal 4 to 6% of your savings, right? Your money. And what that means is that you can never keep up because you have a negative investment called the government, where they have a system that they're following where they're negatively taking away 4 to 6% of the value of your money. Now that's just on average. You don't want to compound that. If you compound, if you have $1,000 in the bank and I take 6% of it this year, and the following year I take another 6%, so that's now 12%, right? And the following year I take another 6%, so then that's 18%. So the compounding effect is quickly eroding the value of your 1,000. So you'll end up with nothing. And now add on top of that bank charges. So the bank is charging you to keep your money, which so it is holding your money and it's charging you a fee for holding your money, which would have been okay if the bank was actually just providing you a service to say, I am safeguarding your money from criminals. You don't want to keep it under your bed or your mattress. So we're going to keep it safely here for you. That's fine. You could decide you want to do that and let them keep it, and you're paying a protection fee. But that's not quite what is happening here, right? Yeah. So Adrian says, Mr. Patterson, you're so right about QE. Yes, it was premised to kickstart economic growth and bring down central bank policy rates and interest rates. But the flip side of the QE in the long run is that it racks up a lot of public or national debt, leave governments heavily indebted, and so on and so forth. Yeah, this is all a trick. Eh? All of this is just fake. I mean, they lie to you so easily. Now, here's the funny thing: if they really cared about fake news, if all of these media houses cared about fake news, um, they would be telling you all this stuff. They'll say, "No, this is fake." When they tell you that they're doing this or this is fake, but they don't tell you this is fake news. They want to lock you down if you say, a word that they don't like about a so-called medical emergency. Yeah. But all of what they tell you in the news about the economy is fake. All of it. All of the stories that they're giving you about what's happening and stimulating the economy, it's all fake. There's no need for government to stimulate any economy. No need. Here's how an economy works, right? An ordinary economy, an economy where nobody gets the power called government to manipulate it. Here's how an economy works. Let's say there are two of you sitting on you're stranded on an island, just two of you, right? Well, let's say it's one of you. So you're the only person on an island somewhere out in the ocean. Nobody else is there. Who stimulates that economy? Who runs that economy? You. So you have to decide every morning when you wake up, what am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? What am I going to spend my time doing? So you, as one person, decides what you're going to do with your time. So what do? You might decide, okay, today I want to eat coconut. So you look around the island and you decide you're going to pick some coconut and you eat some coconut. And then after you finish, you get a nap. And then you say, oh, I'd love to eat a fish. And you work, you did some work, you went and sharpened a spear and you go down to a river and you spend time searching and then sticking a fish. Then you have to go make a fire, fry that fish, and then eat it. That's your economy. Who stimulated that economy? You. You stimulated the economy. You're just making your own decisions about what you want to do with your day and what you want out of the day. If you did nothing, if you decided not to go and pick the coconut, not to go and catch the fish, not to fry the fish, not to build a bamboo hut to sleep under, you'll suffer the consequences. You starve to death and you'll be open to the elements, right? Now, let's say there are two of you now on the economy. There are two of you on the island. What's the economy there? Well, the economy is whether or not both of you decide you're going to trade. And there's only two ways for both of you to live on the island. You either trade or you fight, right? So, for example, let's say you rely on foraging. So you go around the island and you forage, and the other person on the island, they're a bit smarter than you. They like to farm. So they go and they clear an area, build a fence around it so that the wild animals don't come and just eat the stuff. And they plant their stuff, and then they harvest, they build their homes and everything. You kind of live nomadic. You just live in a cave or cottage somewhere under a bush and sleep for the night, right? So you're more exposed. Now you can decide to trade with the other person. You can say, listen, uh, I'm going to. I like what you're doing. I see where you're doing a good job. Growing potato and callaloo and yams and so on. And that's really nice. I'd like to get some of that. What can we trade? And you said, well, I notice you're good at catching fish, so catch some fish, and I'll take some of your fish, and I'll give you some of my callaloo or my yam or whatever. So now both of you start to trade, right? Barter, you would call it at that point, right? You trade by barter. Or you could simply watch when the other person is not looking and go and steal some of their callaloo or steal some of their yam. And then he's going to be upset and he's going to start looking for you. He's going to build himself a slingshot, or sharpen a spear or a bow and arrow and plan to deal with you when you come to steal his stuff. That's an economy, right? It's either an economy based on trade or an economy based on plunder. Where you either plunder from each other or you trade with each other. Where's the government in this? Now, the government is those two persons deciding that they're either going to live by voluntarily trading, exchanging goods with each other. Nobody's forcing the other one. He's not forcing him to farm, and he's not forcing him to catch fish. They're deciding to trade with each other, right? And they set the ground rules. I won't steal from you. You don't steal from me. This is very rudimentary, very, very basic, right? Now this can evolve. Let's say now, there's instead of two of them, there are 200 of them on the island. So they decide to have a council where they vote and put some lawmakers in place. So five of the 200 are there to oversee the country in terms of if you have any dispute with each other, they'll settle it. One of them is the sheriff, and the two of them is the deputy. And if anybody commits any crime, they go and hunt them down and bring them to justice, and so on. So you have that kind of rule. Who is stimulating that economy? Yeah, who is stimulating? It's the people deciding what they want to buy and sell from each other. So if you have a proper economy, you don't need government to stimulate anything. What government can do and should do is make sure that it protects the rights of each of those citizens. And how do you do that? You make a law, and I'm simplifying this now, right? I'm not going into all the details. I'm just trying to simplify it so we can understand. You make a law that says you have the right to do whatever you want with your life, with your time and freedom or liberty, and with your property, provided you don't use force or fraud to go and infringe on the life, liberty, or property of somebody else. Yeah. So that's the basic law that governs the country. Yeah. And so now the government is not there to come and say how they're going to manipulate your economy to get some good out of it. The government is there to allow you to use your time and effort in peace and security to provide for yourself and your family and to trade freely with your fellow human beings. Where did we ever get the notion that the role of government is to come in and mess with our economy and try to manipulate everything and tell us what's best for us, as opposed to allowing us to decide what is best for ourselves while protecting us from each other, meaning, the other person is not able to come and kill you or enslave you or steal your property, right? That is the key thing, right? You don't want anybody to be able to go and kill somebody else or enslave somebody or steal somebody's property. That is the essence of government, to protect you from that. And then there are certain public responsibilities you want to give to the government. So, for example, on this little island, we all need to kind of push our carts or ride our donkeys or a horse or drive if we get to the stage where we now have cars. So we say, okay, the public spaces that we're all going to share, that will be in the hand of the government, right? Our private space, which is our yard, that's ours. When you walk through the gate, that is side of things. So we take care of that, right? But the road is the government's responsibility. And how do we maintain that? Well, all of us agree that we're going to give the government a small amount of our income, and the government, the small amount from all of us will be a big amount, which they will use to ensure that the road is in good repair. So that when I leave from Montego Bay to go and sell my product in Kingston, there's a good road for me to get there because of the arrangement that we have where the government gets a small amount of my income and uses that to care for the road. So now no politician now is going to come and make you any outlandish promises because it's quite simple. They're going to make sure there's a police service to protect you from anybody using force or fraud to take your life, to take your liberty, or to take your property, right? That's a police service. They're going to provide another public service, a justice system. So if you and I have a disagreement, we don't have to duke it out. We go to the justice system and we both explain our side of the story. And there is a judicial process that we follow. And that process then helps us to come to a consensus to resolve the conflict without shooting each other or stabbing each other or thumping each other. Yeah. So the justice system. So the government provides the police system so we don't kill each other, enslave each other, or steal from each other. And the justice system. So if we have any disputes between us, when we engage into contracts or into business and trade, we might have disagreements. So a justice system is there for us to be able to, go through our disagreement in an amicable way, so we come to a solution that doesn't involve war. Yeah, we don't have to kill each other. So police, justice, and public amenities now. So roads we can drive on and get to our homes, get to our business places, and those roads are maintained by the government using the small amount of money that each of us would contribute for that to happen. Right? So police, justice, roads. Then we say, hey, we'd like to have street lights. And when we're going home, the place is not too dark. We can get from point A to point B. So we say, government, take care of that. So you don't want each of us having to own a street lamp on the street. So it's a public matter. Yeah. And so we have this public setup where public electricity on the street, sidewalks for us to walk on, so we don't have to walk in the streets with the cars, and then we say, hey, let's have some community centers as well, so that as a community we can get together without having to go to any one person's home. And the center would have certain basic amenities, maybe a football field, a tennis court, a nice garden where you can go and sit with your family on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, a library so you can go and get access to information and knowledge that you may not be able to afford generally. So you have this common public amenity where you can go and get that. And so now you have a beautiful country. That you have a police service that works in the interest of the people. You have a justice system that works to solve dispute. You have public roads that are properly maintained. You have street lights. You have community centers with parks, gardens, library, and other public amenities. Seriously, how much more complex can it get? When it gets complex, the moment you start to give politicians now the power to decide who will get special benefits, that's when you start to get into problems. Now you're giving politicians the power to say who they're going to steal from and give to who. That's where you now start to have the problem, because when you do that, you destroy the morality of society. When you give any one among us superpowers over the other, you now start to destroy the morality of society, and the people no longer know what is right from wrong, because the system now is convoluted and corrupt. And that's why now you have a plethora of laws. You end up having laws upon laws upon laws upon laws upon laws, and it gets so gigantic in terms of laws that nobody knows the law anymore, right? There are too many laws to know, right? It's too complicated now. And what you have now is people looking to politicians, and then depending on who you elect, they either say turn left or turn right, and you get distracted, and now you start to pit people against each other. It's black versus white, red versus yellow, this party versus that party. And when this one is in power, they get special benefits. When that one is in power, they get special benefits. If you're connected, you get this. If you're connected, you get that. And so now you start to demoralize the society, and you start to create a culture of corruption. You start to create a culture of no longer merit. You no longer earn things, you get things by connection. Yeah. So you no longer just simply be born into the world, learn, and make personal decisions now about how you're going to govern yourself, and then become a valuable member of society, somebody who adds value to society. You produce something that somebody else wants, and they produce something that somebody else wants. And within this network, now you can buy what you want from who produces it, and there's no middleman called the government trying to interfere with your mutually beneficial transactions. Yeah. Now that's where money comes in. Now before money came in, it was bartering. So I want this and you want this, and we both have to find each other and be able to agree on wanting the same thing before we can have a trade. That's called the double coincidence of wants. That's when two persons have the same thing, have what the other person wants, and therefore they can trade together because they have a double coincidence of wants. Now that's bartering. Bartering is very, very inefficient. Why is it inefficient? Because you can't specialize. So more families would have to provide for themselves and trade very little. The moment you introduce an intermediary called money, which is one of the greatest invention of mankind, the moment you introduce this commodity, or this tool rather, called money, now you can increase the velocity of trade. You can have a lot more trade happening because each person doesn't have to find somebody who has exactly what he wants and wants exactly what he has. Instead, he can simply produce what he's good at and sells it to anybody who has money to pay him for it. And then he can use that money and buy whatever he wants from anybody else. So money is a vital aspect of society. So when you hear some people say that money is the root of all evil, that's not true. Money is the root of much good. The root of all evil is anybody who wants to use force or fraud to take what belongs to somebody else. It's where you have persons using, what you call it now, using force or using tyranny or using war to get what they want. A system where you simply trade voluntarily with others reduces the need for war and encourages everyone to be productive. Am I boring you? Is this boring? I mean, I try to explain these things because it helps you to understand better where the UIC is coming from and understand what's wrong with our society and how we have to fix it. So I like to explain these things because they're so important. I'm not a politician, so I'm not here to give you nice, sweet sounding speeches and make you feel good, and then you vote for me, and then you find out that you made a huge mistake, right? Everything that I tell you is what we're going to do, right? and it's based on our understanding of the system and what needs to be changed. So I hope you can, bear with us. Yeah. Somebody says we need to be aggressive in sharing these ideologies. So at the very next election, UIC sits in Parliament. Um, and somebody else says, Mr. Patterson, as you say, bartering, do you think that the auction system of foreign exchange by the government a few years ago, kind of bartering for foreign exchange to help solve the shortage? No, Jamaica has no shortage of foreign exchange. What we have is shortage of good governance. Jamaica has no shortages. Jamaica is a very, very, very wealthy country. We have enough wealth in this country to make every Jamaican live a decent life. Not super wealthy like you're gonna have, um, grand palaces. I'm talking about living the life that you will live when you go abroad and work a basic job and can afford a decent apartment and a decent living, right? So we have all that. There's no shortage here. What we do have is bad governance. Yeah. So if we can get rid of the bad governance, you'll quickly see a massive upsurge in productivity and a massive, massive upsurge in prosperity happening. All we need in Jamaica to be prosperous is good governance. That's all we need, right? If we had good governance, you would have low crime, you would have high productivity, and you would have therefore more economic activity and broad-based opportunities for anyone to find a decent job or to be able to build a successful business if you're so inclined. There's some of us who are going to be great entrepreneurs and some of us are going to be great employees and so on. So we just need to allow the system to produce this. So where was I before? So money, as I was explaining, money is a crucial element to an economy. That is why the banking cartel worked so hard to take away the monetary system from the people and give it to a banking cartel behind the scene to systematically destroy you and your economy. Anybody who gets control of your banking system, they control you. Yeah? And so that is why just earlier this year, the government of Jamaica transferred our central bank to the private banking cartels and also gave them $20.6 billion on top of it. Your money. They took your and my hard earned money and gave it to the banking cartel. They took the Central Bank of Jamaica, which is supposed to serve the government of Jamaica and by extension the people of Jamaica. They took that and gave it away. And they told us that they're doing that because it's good for us. Damn lie. A complete lie. What they have done is given away control of our monetary system to those who will then control it to enrich themselves at our expense. As a matter of fact, that transfer was long in coming. It wasn't just then, it was many, many years in the making. From the moment Jamaica joined the IMF the first time until now, they've joined a fraudulent banking system that has been raping the people of Jamaica, sucking billions of dollars out of our economy every single year in the form of interest to two groups, to the local banking cartel and to the international banking cartel, sucking it out. And of course, all of this is done by our own politicians who we were to have supposedly elected, but we didn't really elect them. They were sold to us by the private sector organization because the Jamaican people, if the two major parties did not have the funding of the PSOG, they could not have the microphone and the media to lie to us and deceive us and trick us into voting for them. Yeah. So you think you're there voting. You're not voting. you're being controlled, you're being manipulated. So, for example, right now, if you live in Jamaica today, you cannot hear anything about the UIC except we now live in a world with social media where I can be talking to you like this. And if and when they're ready, they'll just turn me off. But let's say we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Facebook, how would I reach you? How would the UIC get in touch with you without the private sector organization giving us the money to do so? Yeah? Or some of us who are rich decide to do it, but why would we do it? Yeah? So, a rich person may choose to do something good or something very bad with their money, right? The UIC is not sponsored by any rich, powerful organization. Yeah. The UIC is sponsored by the people of Jamaica. So ordinary citizens are the ones that are sponsoring this political movement, which is why we're relatively poor, right? We don't have millions of dollars coming from the PSOJ. But why? Why does the PSOJ fund the other two parties? Very simple. The other two parties speak their language and pursue their objective. And so they pay them, they give them the money so that they can then market to you. Now, when you vote, you're voting based on your eyes. You're just seeing and saying, oh, okay, this one looks nice, or this one looks nice, or I like the promises here, or I like the promises there, and you go and vote. And you only heard those promises and those ideas because you couldn't hear the other people. No independent gets elected in Jamaica. No third party gets elected in Jamaica. Why? Because the people can't hear them. If you have an independent candidate in a constituency like mine, Northeast St. Elizabeth, where does he get the money to go to all 30 uh, PDs in each of the four divisions and connect with the people and communicate? Where does he get the time? Who pays him when he leaves his family, when he leaves home and says, honey, I'm going off to talk with the people? Yes, while he's doing that, who pays honey? Who makes sure there's food on the table when he gets home? Who pays the light bill? Who pays the water bill? Who pays the children's school fee? Who buys the books? Who puts gas in the car? Or who pays for the taxi transportation? So no independent candidate can reach the people in the constituency because they don't have the money to do it. If they take the time to try and do it, they're losing money. So you need to understand politics, right? If he takes the time to go into the community, he's losing money. All of the time that I've spent working on the UIC, it's a detriment to my family. Yeah, I've already expended more than $15 million. No, I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. No, I'm not rich, and I'm not filthy rich. I'm in a better position than many other Jamaicans. But the truth is, it's a huge sacrifice and a major indentation in my life. I mean, what could I do with $15 million? A lot. Yeah, I could do a lot with $15 million. And I could, of course, enjoy myself. I could continue to do what I'm doing in terms of my own private business, earn whatever I can earn from that, build my home, enjoy whatever entertainment, travel, take care of my children, my three daughters, and just enjoy life. My wife keep asking me, "What's wrong with you, buddy?" You know, so not too many people are going to do that. Now, when you see these other guys doing it, when you see the big corporations funding these two parties, and you see these politicians who are full-time politicians who are, every day they're at it. I can't keep up with Andrew and Mark. I mean, this is their full-time job. They're at this every single day. They're planning every day how to deceive the Jamaican people to get back into power. They're at it every single solitary day, and they have the benefit of taxpayers' money because they control the tax coffers. They're getting taxpayers' money, plus they're getting the PSOJ money, which is pushing and pumping them to go forward. Now, me, I first just spent all my family's money, you know, to do what everybody says is impossible. It's impossible for a third party to win, they say. No, I don't believe that. I know that a third party can win in Jamaica. but it's a very hard road to travel, a very difficult road to travel. But we're traveling that road, and we're getting closer and closer and closer and closer by the day. But it's a difficult road, and you need to understand it. We all need to understand and stop seeing politics like a little fairy tale. Politics doesn't happen in a vacuum. Politics is real and it's costly. Yeah. When we vote for one of these two parties, we are voting away our future because they are going to continue the fraudulent monetary system, which makes sure that when you retire, your pension will not be able to keep up. Yeah, will not be able to keep up with the cost of living. So you are heading towards financial disaster. Yeah, because you can't. And how do you plan for your retirement? How do you plan for your retirement? How do you plan for your retirement in a system that is designed to fight against you? Yes, if you are bright enough to understand financial markets, to understand finance, to understand economics, to understand business, to take the risk as an entrepreneur, and I don't see it as a risk. You have to, because if you the alternative is to just be an employee. And just being an employee is more risky than being an entrepreneur. I always tell people, when you are an entrepreneur, you have many employers, right? All your customers are your employers. If one of them fire you, you still have the others. But when you're an employee, you normally only have one employer, and if they fire you, you're in trouble. So it's really, challenging, right? So um, I want you to know that the system that you have been in for all of your mother, your grandparents, this system is designed to work against you. The UIC wants to scrap that system. We want to get rid of the fraudulent monetary system, extract Jamaica from that, and let Jamaica get back to real money. Yeah, so we'll use real money, money that is tied to productivity. So every dollar that you have in the economy is a dollar which is tied to productivity, so that nobody is stealing your purchasing power. So if you work today and save a dollar, 20 years from now, that dollar should still be worth the same amount, being able to buy the same amount of goods and services within Jamaica. That's what we're talking about when we say create free banking, bringing back true money into the economy, right? It's like gold. Gold back in the day was true money because it represented production. A bar of gold was actually produced gold. Somebody had extracted it from the earth, processed it, and bring it to fruition so that it can be used in, either for ornamental purposes or in some kind of electronics and so on. Yeah. Adrian says, Mr. Patterson, do you think that the concept of direct democracy would be good for Jamaica in the future instead of the representative model of democracy? No, I don't believe, democracy is a dangerous thing. Democracy means majority rule. You don't want a country where majority rules, and you don't want a country where minority rules. You want a true republic that respects the sovereignty of every citizen and protects the rights of every citizen. Democracy is overrated, and the absence of the overrated democracy does not mean dictatorship. So don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean communism. It doesn't mean socialism. It doesn't mean anything like that. What it means is you need a system of government that respects the sovereignty of every citizen, which means every citizen's right is protected. You no longer have a situation where your rights are being determined by the electorate when they vote. Yeah? You don't want that. You don't want your rights to be subjected to a vote. You want your rights to be enshrined in the Constitution. So you call that now the rule of law. So the system that you're going to live in, you're ruled by laws rather than the whims of men. And those laws are designed to protect your core values, which is your life, your liberty, and your property. Yeah. So your core valuables are those three things. Nothing is more important to you than those three things. Your life, without life, you have lost your future. Your liberty, Without liberty, you have lost your freedom and your property. Without property, you have lost your earnings, the product of your labor. Yeah? And so you want a system of government which doesn't leave those things up to the whims of politicians. You want a system that enshrines those things in a constitution permanently, no matter who is elected, no matter whether the person is tall or short, fat or skinny, black or white, your your rights, your most valuable possession, your life, liberty, and property rights are enshrined and protected. For example, just to give you an example, in the UIC system, the government doesn't have the right to tax you on your property into perpetuity. So when you buy a product, you don't pay tax more than once. So for example, when you own a house, land, you don't keep paying tax on that for the rest of your life. Okay, that's ridiculous. If you buy something, it's now yours. It's not the government, it's now yours. So the government doesn't have a claim on what you have bought. Yeah? So what the government has a claim on is you agree through a contract, which we call a constitution, and we're going to embed this in the Constitution. What you have is a law that says once you're a citizen of Jamaica, you pay 10% of your income from all sources to the government each year in order to ensure you have a safe, clean, and orderly country. One where you have good roads, good sidewalks, good street lights. One where you have a good police service, a good justice system, and good public amenities. And that's enshrined in law. We don't need to have a whole heap of cuss and fight and name calling in a political system to get these things. That's ridiculous. That is built into a bad system to distract you. Partisan politics is designed exclusively to distract. That's why they have it in America. That's why they have it in England. They did not use partisan politics to become wealthy. Yeah? The British didn't use partisan politics to become a wealthy nation. They used slavery, colonialism, right? And they use internal free markets to develop their industries. And when they got well developed and strong, then they instituted partisan politics to control the people and trick the people so that things don't get out of hand and the oligarchy lose their position. So partisan politics is actually a tool at manipulating the people to keep certain status quo in place. Now, they've they've gotten us to think that it's normal and that this is what you need to run a country. And it's wrong. You don't need that to run a country. I'll give you an example. If you're running a business, any one of you, yeah, and you have a business, if you were to organize a board for that business and divide that board in two and say you on this side belongs to one party and you on this side belongs to another party, you will vie for the votes of whoever, and one of you will be the government and one of you will be the opposition. I can assure you, you will destroy that business in no time. Instead, what you do have in well run businesses is indeed a board, but the people in the board do not sit as enemies around the board, as divided into two tribes or more around the board. They sit as equals. Yeah? So all of your representatives sit as equals and they deal with policy issue by issue. They don't form a block that you're now going to do whatever. You have issues by issue. So, for example, in on one issue, let's say you have a board of 20 people. On one issue, five may be in favor and 15 against. On another issue, 10 may be in favor and 10 against. On another issue, 13 might be in favor and 7 against. So you always have a shifting happening. It's not a block that is I am permanently a PNP or permanently a GLP or permanently. Instead, you have people who are there to represent their constituents and to make sure they deliberate on matters. So, what the UIC has done, we have taken the time to design a system that will work for Jamaica, in fact, that will work for any country. And this didn't come out just drop out of the sky. This comes from years of me analyzing democracies and different countries and different ways of governing, and then studying what is wrong, and then designing a system that will work for Jamaica, for the Caribbean, for Africa, and for the rest of the world. So, what we're going to have in the end is the best political model the world has ever seen, and Jamaica would have been the inventor, the developer of that model, which moves away from divisive partisan politics, tribal politics, to a Congress model, which America tried to do but lost their way very quickly. They never fully understand it. We now understand it better and can produce that for Jamaica and the world. Yeah. So yes, correct lion rule. No more divide and conquer with the UIC. One Jamaica. Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to export this philosophy, this ideology, this way of doing business to the rest of the world, and it is going to work. It is going to work tremendously. We're going to move away from the fear-based practice. That's correct, Wayne. And so we're not going to cuss and fight anymore. We're going to focus on policies. And the truth is, they're by the model that we're designing, you're reducing the need for conflict. Because once you first and foremost establish that everybody has a right to their life, liberty, and property, and nobody has a right to infringe on that, and once you've established clearly what is the role of government, yeah, and let government stay in its lane, and the citizen now are in their lane, then you don't have this need for partisan bickering and fighting. Yeah, we can now come together as a people because the things that are dividing us are taken out of the equation. What is it that's dividing us? It's corruption. It is people wanting to be in power so that they have access to resources that others don't have access to, so that they have power that others do not have. So they get to decide who gets what benefits, as opposed to a system which allocates the resources of government to everyone equally. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about a pie in the sky here. When I say equally, I mean, for example, if all the roads are fixed properly and maintained, then that's equal opportunity for all of us to use the road, to go to school, to do our business, and so on. If every community has a quality community center, not the kind of things we have as community center. No, we're talking about real community centers that are properly designed, properly built, properly staffed to support the community. So you can go in there and you can get self-help materials. If you want to learn plumbing or carpentry or whatever, you can go in there and find the resources to teach yourself, and it's properly cataloged and properly maintained. You want to get into artificial intelligence, you can go into the digital library and access the stuff because it's properly stored and made available. And all you have to do is to not mash it up. So you have proper staffing and proper access requirements so that you don't go and mash up everything because we like to mash up things, eh? So you have a proper community center with a library, a gymnasium, a football field, table tennis court, a lovely garden section that you go and enjoy sitting in a park with your family, and it's built for the community and it's maintained. Now, you don't give it to the community. That's disastrous. We keep making the same mistakes. We create these little poor quality community centers and then we say we give it to the community. That's ridiculous. You can't give it to the community. Anything which is owned by the community is going to be destroyed very quickly. There's a reason why, because nobody owns it. Your community center must be owned and operated by the government because it's a public good. Yeah. So every public good or public service must be owned and operated by the government. Every private good or private service must be owned and operated by private citizens. It's that simple. The moment you start to get those things mixed up, you end up with massive failures and large corruption and waste. That's what happened during the 70s when man they tried the collective farms. I mean, tons of monies were borrowed. Then you give these monies to groups of people and tell them nobody really owns it. You own it as a community. It's over. They're going to steal the money. They're going to sell the parts. It's going to fail. And you have to understand human behavior. You understand? If you understand human behavior, then you can now build solutions that doesn't go against human nature, but cooperates with it and guide it in the right direction. And so what we're going to have are true public services being run by the government. Now guess what? Because there are true public services, yeah, because there are true public services, we don't need to fight anymore over party about them because no one party is responsible for it. It is just a public service. You don't say, oh, when my party was in power, we got that. No, no, let's get rid of all of that. We just need to have good public services, and we just have to have a timetable, and we have to build them and staff them and collect the taxes to pay for them. Now, where does the taxes come from? This is another fallacy we have to get rid of out of our society. The vast majority of those who are poor live in a fake reality that somehow the government is giving them something for free. We have to get rid of that. There must be nothing which is called free. Our citizens must know that everything we enjoy is paid for by somebody. Everything we enjoy must be paid for by somebody. Why are you afraid, Roy? Roy Henry says I called public service so much times he got scared. I'm not sure why you're scared. Tell me why. But everything that we want, whether it's a school, a hospital, a community center, roads, police, justice system, all these things must be paid for. And so we have to tell our citizens, stop it. All of us must be taxpayers. No citizen must be exempted from taxation. I know we have politicians playing games with us, and we have to stop these things. Get rid of the game. Let's stop having politicians try to fool us. You can't get water for free. You can't get electricity for free. You can't get education for free. You can't get healthcare for free. You can't get roads for free. You can't get community centers for free. All of these things must be paid for by the people of Jamaica. And if it's not paid for by the people of Jamaica, we're going to get tricked by foreigners who are going to give us something that is supposed to be free, but it's going to be a trap. They're going to trap us. And we're going to get this for free and end up losing everything else. Yeah? Because nothing is free. So, what we have to do is to make sure that every Jamaican, to the best of their ability, is engaged in productive activities that contributes to the funds we need to ensure we have good roads, good police, good justice system, good public services, and therefore a good society. That's what we need. So let's not fool ourselves. Let's stop having some among us believe that somebody else should work hard and send their children to school. Let's stop the idea of having anybody believe that some of us must work hard and pay for their health care. Let us all be a part of the solution. So what the UIC has done, we have designed a simple taxation system, very simple taxation system. And our system is designed to ensure that we have two taxes and two taxes only, just two taxes. Tax number one is a income tax, which is not the same as the current income tax. This is very different. This is a true income tax. where no rich person will escape it. We don't have any loopholes for anybody to escape. So no rich person, no middle class person, no poor person. Right? Right now we have all these laws which allows rich people to dodge the system and get away. We're gonna have a simple, straightforward tax system. You don't need a tax accountant to understand it. You don't need to spend money on expensive tax lawyers to avoid it. It's going to be very straightforward. Yeah. So we're going to have two simple taxes in Jamaica under UIC government. One income tax, which takes care of all of the public services I spoke about. One income tax. That tax is very simple. It's a tax on your income from all sources. Anywhere you get money from that comes to you, it's taxable to 10%. Okay? It's a straightforward tax. You make $1,000, you pay $100. You make $1,000,000, you pay $100,000. Okay? So everybody will pay that tax. Everybody, poor, middle class, rich, everybody pays that tax. That tax is to make sure that you have a safe, clean, and orderly country with a good justice system, a good police system, good quality roads, um, community centers, all of that properly done. 10%, all sources. Very straightforward. Yeah. Then we have a 10% GCT, which is a sales tax. You pay that tax on whatever you buy in the markets, whatever you buy, wherever you buy it, you pay 10%. So we're going to eliminate all the duties, all the excessive duties that's preventing Jamaicans from accessing technology and be able to build your businesses fast. We're going to get rid of all of that. Whatever you want to import into Jamaica, you import it at 10%. Okay? So now the local producer will have access to technology to build up his business and become very productive and create jobs. That 10% tax now is a special tax. That tax is completely dedicated to eliminating poverty in Jamaica. That's its primary purpose. Poverty elimination, protection of the environment, and saving for a rainy day. That's the emergency fund. So that's the purpose of that 10% GCT. Yeah, that money will cover sending any child to school who needs the help to go all the way from basic school to PhD. So no child must ever again not be able to achieve their maximum academic and technical potential because of a monetary gap. So there's no stop from basic school all the way through to a PhD. If you can attain it, the system will be here to help you achieve it. Of course, you're going to benefit 10 times more than what we have given you. You're going to benefit the country even more. If we can produce scientists and engineers and tradespeople of the highest caliber, professionals, we're going to reap massive rewards. Singapore has proved it. So we don't have to recreate the wheel. We can just simply build on what they've done. Okay? Uh, this will also be ensuring that the children receive proper nutrition. We believe in a strong nutrition program from prenatal care all the way through where you're getting proper healthcare checkups to make sure that every child is developing optimally. So we want to have psychologists and nutritionists paying attention to every child to build up the child to be the smartest, the brightest, the most effective human being he or she can be. So we're going to take, you see how they build electronic components like a phone or whatever, how they have to carefully understand the electronics and build it with precision so that it operates optimally. That's how we want to approach our children. We want to make sure that we're producing high quality citizens. And so we're going to now pay fine attention to their Now, by the way, I know that the Prime Minister is copying all of this. He's going to say all of this to you, and the PNP is going to say it to you. But don't be fooled. They've had 78 years to do it. They didn't do it. They're not going to do it. going to use the words, they're going to tell you the same things, but they're not committed to a Jamaica the way we are. You understand? They've already gotten used to being a thief, right? So they're going to focus on stealing from the people. What we're talking about now is real development, serious development. So we're going to buckle down. We're going to buckle down and make sure every one of our picking of them have the understanding, the intellect, and the technical competencies they need to be super productive, super professional, very ethical, healthy, strong, brilliant. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to mastermind a complete revolution in our education system. Okay? And that not just the mind, but the body. We have to develop the body so that the mind is also strong. Yeah? And so we are going to take now, so this 10% GCT is going to help us to fund this whole thing. We're also now talking about parental education. We know many of our parents, some of our mothers got pregnant early. Many of our fathers are not really fathers, they're sperm donors and all of that. So we have to embark on a national education program to educate. It's like how Manley brought in Jamal back in the day. Now we're talking about bigger than that. We want to get our adults up to speed by making knowledge, education available to them, tailored to them, so that in between their work and family, they can become um, mentally adjusted, so that they can understand the world around them, the world that's changing them. We're in a very new world, and unfortunately, most of us are way behind in that world. Our children right now are being left behind because our school curriculum is not designed for today. The school curriculum that our children are learning from are designed for yesterday, and they're being graduated today with an outdated, poorly designed education that fails the majority of them. Yeah. So so we are going to have to fix that with adult education to get our parents up to speed, a workfare program to help our adults who have been left behind because of a bad system. We have to have a system now to repair that. So we have to create massive amount of jobs. And that is why our organic farming program is so important, because we're talking about manufacturing food on a scale never seen before in the history of Jamaica. Maximizing our use of lands, but not just ordinary farming. We have to get into high tech farming, but organically. Yeah. So it's true organic, but it's high tech driven. So we can get maximum yield, high volume for local consumption and also for export. Yeah. So farming is going to become our oil. It's going to become our gold. It's going to become the engine that drives our economy. Yeah. And so through our farming program, coupled with our community tourism program, because we don't have a phobia with tourism. I know some people say, this and that, but I have no problem with tourism if it's done right. Jamaica has a unique place in order to attract massive amount of tourists. So what we want to do is to shift the arrangement so that tourism becomes a natural part of the fabric of Jamaica. Instead of having concentrated tourism in certain pockets, we want to make the entire country a tourist destination. I hope they teeth this idea. Please, Andrew and Mark, teeth this idea right now and run and implement it, because if we do that, we can significantly improve the economy of Jamaica overnight. Yeah, overnight we can transform this economy through those two avenues. One, organic farming on a mass scale similar to the Netherlands. We can generate billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of jobs that we have to import labor to help fill them. We can do the same with tourism by shifting away from just the all-inclusives to having a all-inclusive that includes all of Jamaica, and make Jamaica a full tourism product, which would benefit both us, the people, because of the high quality experience. Now, just imagine, just think for a second. Just imagine a Jamaica that looks like Sandals Resort. Imagine a Jamaica. You're not inside Sandals, you're inside just Jamaica. You're not inside the one of their beautiful resorts. You're just in Jamaica. Come off the plane, driving from the Norman Manley International, you know, up through Kingston to go into Portmore, and just that stretch. Just imagine that stretch looking like Sandals Resort. Just imagine driving from the Montego Bay Airport, and you're going all the way to St. Mary, and you're driving, and the whole of that area looks like Sandal Resort. Just imagine you're going to Tivoli Gardens, and it looks like Sandal Resort. You go to Seaview Gardens, and it looks like Sandal Resort. You go to Balaclava or Silo in St. Elizabeth here, or Braes River, and it looks like Sandal Resort. I hope you're following me, and I hope you understand. That's how you want the entire country to look and feel and smell. You do that, and we quadruple our tourist arrival and experience. Remember, you also have to attach to that the safety, right? Now, that's definitely going to help with safety, because I can tell you this: many of the criminals we have here, they would like to not have to live a life of criminality. They would like to have an upstanding job as a person in the tourist industry, for example, that their son or daughter can look up to them and they can tell them what to do for a living. Many of the boys, I know they look horrible, I know they look hopeless, but they're not hopeless. If they had a reasonable alternative and could see that it is stable and will work, many of them will turn from a life of crime and get involved in a productive activity that can make them feel like a real man, a real woman. So trust me, we can make this happen. So we get our tourism product, we get our agricultural product up. At the same time, we start to gradually now shift, because of our education product, shift into the what do you call it now? The artificial intelligence world, the world of coding, and being able to be an offshore haven for creative productions in graphical arts, digital arts, digital technologies of various forms, and so on. Because we can do all the modeling here, we don't have to have all the technical equipment, technical, like the solid state resources. That part can be done in a different country. We just do the high level intellectual capital side of it, and then shift the rest out to be produced in China, for example. Because Jamaicans are bright. We're only held back by our poor education system and poor governance. Yeah. So Roy Henry says one of the biggest problems with tourism is that they segregate the natives from the tourists, not realizing that a country's greatest resource is its people. That's what most folks come here for, to vibe with the people, eat with the people, and so on. Yes, that is true, but that's not the only problem. The real core of the problem is that they have to segregate the people from the people, that's the tourists from the people, because the people sometimes don't know how to behave appropriately, and they have not trained the people properly, and they're worried that something might go wrong, which will then damage the public image and negatively impact the industry. So as long as they have not created the conditions for the people to behave appropriately, then they'll continue to have that problem. So we have to address that. Yeah. Carvel says most of our young men work when they visit and live in foreign countries, which demonstrate they don't necessarily want to steal. Absolutely correct, Carvel. Absolutely correct. Many here would love an opportunity to go on the farm work. Many bad man, who you say I'm a bad man, eh? Yeah, he'd love to get a farm work card. When he get a farm work card, what do you think he's going to do? He goes to Canada, and he goes and picks strawberries in a field. Why he picks strawberry in a field? Because the price that he gets for picking the strawberry over there gives him an amount that makes him feel like it's worth it. So he can come back to Jamaica with a big screen TV, with a stereo system. He can buy a brand new bike or bicycle, or he can add on another room to his house, or fix the roof, or put on a veranda. Yeah, by going over there and work. If he was able to do the same thing here in Jamaica, he wouldn't have to go over there, and he would be happy. Yeah, and we're not talking about a lot of money. They don't make a whole lot of money, but they make a whole lot more than what they make here because of our poorly managed system. Yeah. So, anyways, I have spent longer than I planned to spend with you tonight, so I'm going to have to leave you. I hope you had a chance to understand more about where we're going, and I thank you in advance and look forward to your help. We badly need your help to help you. So, if you want the Jamaica we're talking about, please go on our website, uicjamaica.com, donate, and share all of our content with your friends and families, and let every Jamaican know that if we want a better Jamaica, we have to join hands together and work for it. Because the PSOJ, they have no intentions of letting go of what they have. And the two major parties have no intentions of giving Jamaica the kind of Jamaica that you want. They're very committed to keeping things just the way they are. So if you want something different, we're going to have to work for it. So thanks very much and talk to you again soon. Have a good night, sleep well, and be safe. Take care.